Good morning. This is Natalie Gilly with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. Welcome to the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar today on Wednesday, October 19th. I will go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Today, our spotlight community is on the community of Frazee. Great things are happening in Frazee. So we'll give the speakers from Frazee an opportunity to get to know you and the participants in this webinar today. So if you could go into the chat box and introduce yourself, we'd like to know who's here. So if you can type your name, your location, and this is the trivia question for today. What future park is the covered bridge located on? I'm not going to tell you the answer just yet. I'm going to leave that up to the speakers and they can share that with you later in the presentation. But this will help you get to know a little bit more about Frazee. This is the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network, and we connect local bike walk leaders to share stories and ideas about how they're lifting up the walking and biking culture in their communities. At BikeMN, we have a land acknowledgement statement, and I'll go ahead and read the statement. We want to acknowledge that we occupy the ancestral land of the several indigenous groups, including the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Cheyenne, Oto, Iowa, and Meskwaki people. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We affirm the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities. Despite centuries of colonial violence, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Indigenous peoples are still here demonstrating innumerable talents and gifts in the midst of continued oppression. They must be celebrated and uplifted. You'll see on the screen here, and Ted can put this in the chat box, the link to finding out what native land you're located on, and you might look that up to see where you are or possibly where you're doing some work and figure out what native land you're located on. So this is our October webinar. We have 2 remaining webinars for the 2022 season. And in November, we'll welcome Tony Desnick to the webinar to talk about bikes and food access in the Twin Cities. And then just to save the date, on December 21st will be the webinar in December. And if you are joining today as a guest and would like to become a member of the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network, feel free to email me at natalie@bikemn.org, or you can go to our website, bikemn.org, and click on the links to become a member there. Some of you may be on the Safe Routes to School Network, and they have upcoming webinars on November 3rd from 10 to 11 with the topic of accessibility and adaptive bicycling and safe routes to school. And then in December on the 1st from 10 to 11, they will be reviewing the annual survey results and resource center. So email Julie J at movemn.org if you'd like to join the Safe Routes to School Network. Today's webinar, as I mentioned, is about Frazee, Minnesota. So it's exciting to shine the spotlight on Frazee. And I welcome to the webinar today 2 speakers who will be speaking about this topic, Patrick Hollister and Hank Ludtke. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you.
You're welcome to have us.
So can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Patrick. Go ahead.
Okay, super. So Hank and I are going to talk to you for about 20 minutes here, and then we're going to open it up for a question and answer. I'm speaking for roughly the first half. Hank's going to speak for the second half, but of course, we're probably going to interrupt each other as we go along here. So I'm Patrick Hollister with Partnership for Health. We are the combined public health departments of Becker, Clay, Otter Tail, and Wilkin Counties in West Central Minnesota. We are funded in part by a statewide health improvement partnership grant. That's why the SHIP is capitalized there in our name. So next slide, please. I guess this was supposed to be my intro slide. This is me in Rio de Janeiro in 2017. So, but I guess I already jumped the gun on that and told you who I am. So we can go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about all the great things that have happened recently and are happening now and will happen in the future in Frazee. I'm honored to have with me here today Hank Ludke, former mayor of Frazee and still a super active member of the community. So I took this photo back in about 2011 when Hank was still mayor of Frazee. It's a small town, so they have their city council meetings in the fire hall. This was a city council meeting the evening that Frazee adopted a complete streets policy. And a lot of you on the call will recall that around 2010 to 2014, there was quite a flurry of activity, not just in Minnesota, but nationwide in terms of adopting complete streets policies. There was sort of a huge wave of that, which was great. And it's still continuing to this date to some extent. Frazee was the first community in Becker County to adopt a complete streets policy. Since then, we've got about 11 or 12 communities around the 4-county area that have adopted complete streets policies, but Frazee was one of the early ones. Next slide, please. Frazee was also the first county or the first community in Becker County to become an official bicycle-friendly community. I'm sure everybody on the call is familiar with that program. This was a meeting that we had. I'm going to date this at about 2014. It's sort of a kickoff meeting to get Frazee applying for the bicycle friendly community program. Frazee did apply and received bicycle friendly community designation in 2015. They got bronze in 2015. As I'm sure all of you know, the award lasts for 4 years. Frazee renewed in 2019 and got bronze again. That bronze expires in 2023. I have not yet had a conversation with Frazee city officials about reapplying in 2023, but I certainly would like to see them do that. You can see Natalie there in the upper left, and former city administrator Jonathan Smith there in the bottom row, second from the left, and then Hank, of course, is there. So next slide, please. In 2015, as I mentioned, Frazee got bronze bicycle friendly community, and they also broke ground on a safe routes to school trail. So we decided, why not combine those two events? And so this is the combined celebration of bronze bicycle friendly community and safe routes to school groundbreaking. Next slide. So Partnership for Health, I had a conversation with then city administrator Jonathan Smith back in 2015, because it came to our attention that MnDOT was scheduled to reconstruct Highway 87 through Frazee in 2021. And I thought, you know, Partnership for Health could fund a concept plan process for Frazee in 2016 so that Frazee could apply for the Transportation Alternatives Grant in 2017. It takes 4 years to get your money because it's federal money. So the idea was, if Frazee got the grant, they would get it in 2021, just in time for MnDOT's reconstruction of Highway 87. And they could put a segment of the Heartland Trail, which is the trail that someday is going to run from Cass Lake all the way to Moorhead. There are bits and pieces of it being built as we go along here. There could be a segment of the Heartland Trail along Highway 87 in Frazee. Jonathan liked the idea. And so Partnership for Health did fund a concept plan process in 2016. This is a photo from one of those meetings. Next slide. This is a flyer for a public open house in 2016 as part of that Highway 87 planning process. Next slide, please. And then we were visited by officials from Minnesota Department of Health and also some MnDOT officials for kind of a tour of Highway 87. I think this photo is from 2017. And we kind of showed them where we wanted to do the project. The sort of the north end of the project is Frazee High School. And then I think the next slide is a photo from sort of the middle of the project. At the intersection of Main and Highway 87, there's a statue of a turkey. Now, this is not the famous huge statue of a turkey. This is a smaller statue of a turkey. Frazee has a larger statue of a turkey, which is not shown here. This turkey had to get temporarily relocated for the project, and they're finding a new home for the turkey. But here we are at the second largest turkey in Frazee. So next slide, please. Now, what happened was Frazee did apply in 2017 for the grant. They did not get it. MnDOT was kind enough to reschedule the reconstruction project from 2021 to 2022 in order to give Frazee a second shot at applying for the grant. Frazee did apply again in 2018, and lo and behold, they did get the grant that time. So the project got rescheduled to 2022, which is why we did it this year. The gentleman here in the wheelchair is Todd. He works at MnDOT Central Office. I don't know what his official job title is, but I like to think of him as the statewide handicapped accessibility and ADA compliance officer. He basically visits these state trunk highway projects in advance of construction and tours the project with his team, and they make their recommendations as to how to make the project handicapped accessible and ADA compliant. And here he was on his visit to Highway 87 in Frazee. MnDOT, Todd and MnDOT were kind enough to let me join in on the tour, and I learned a lot. It's a very complex subject, bringing a project like this into ADA compliance. And there's so many different geometric factors to take into consideration. It was really fascinating for me, and I'm grateful that they let me join that tour. Okay, next slide. So here we are. This was last Wednesday for the ribbon cutting for the Highway 87 project, including the trail. So a segment of the Heartland Trail is on your left in this photo. Because this portion of the trail is concrete, it looks like a giant sidewalk, but it really is a multi-use path. It's for both biking and walking. We're going to get it hooked up to the rest of the trail, and it's going to be great. So I think if you go to the next slide, this is Hank's intro slide. So I'll let Hank take it away from here.
All right. Well, it's good that you people are all on today, and I really appreciate all the work that Patrick has done, and also working with Bike MN over the years. This is a picture when we were doing a groundbreaking ceremony for a bridge on the Heartland Trail just east of Acorn Lake coming from Detroit Lakes. And this was a major project that got held up for a while. You know, of course, when you're dealing with a bonded trail instead of some of the options we have nowadays, you're at the mercy sometimes of the legislature and politics. But this has been a great project to move forward with. Next slide, please. And this is kind of showing the routing of the Heartland Trail Extension. And so right now, the Heartland Trail comes from Cass Lake down to Park Rapids. And with a legislative reroute, when you look at this map, you'll see this bottom section on your right where it kind of doglegs down to Frazee. That was a legislative reroute done because the route they were looking at on the scenic byway of Highway 34 had 25 or 27 water hazards from Snellman, Minnesota, west to Detroit Lakes, and that was just the ones they knew about. So we were able to get it legislatively rerouted to go through Frazee. And the segments that are being mainly worked on are between Detroit Lakes and Frazee. We are doing preliminary design from Moorhead towards Holly in the future, and also from Park Rapids to Osage, and looking for routing options to Frazee in both directions, and coming out of Detroit Lakes. Next slide, please. This is a construction that was finished up last year between Detroit Lakes and Frazee, and this would be west of about a mile west of where I was speaking at the podium. Next slide, please. And this is a segment just between the previous slide and where I was talking on the podium. This is Acorn Lake. And it's a beautiful area there. This is what originally was old US Highway 2 before it was moved to northern Minnesota and Highway 10 came through. And so when you go on this segment of the trail, if you look across the lake, there is a railroad. And back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, when they were building the causeway across there and rerouting the railroad track, they had a bunch of army mules and boxcars there that fell off the grade into the bottom of the lake. So it's kind of a dead mule overlook here. Next slide, please. And this is the bridge that's completed. So this is looking west about 2 miles out of Frazee. And this bridge connects then to the Acorn Lake segment and on into the city of Detroit Lakes via an underpass under the 4-lane highway just on the east side of Detroit Lakes. Next slide, please. And this, of course, is the ribbon cutting for that bridge where I was speaking earlier at the podium. And we have some of our legislators there, former city administrators, county officials. Patrick Hollister is right next to Brad Green with who has a red shirt on the right-hand side there. And that's Mike Hewlett's bicycle that's sitting there. And Mike was formerly with Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails group from this area and was down this last week for the ribbon cutting also. Next slide, please. And so if you're wondering where the covered bridge is, there it is. This is a future park that we Frazee Community Development Corporation that I'm vice president of is working on. We're working on 156 acres just on the northeast side of Frazee. And this property connects with our school district and our ball fields. This is the Otter Tail State Water Trail that goes underneath there. And this will actually be home to the Heartland Trail Extension, the North Country National Scenic Trail, and the State Water Trail. And we will provide rustic camping and also RV camping for this, and eventually an interpretive center and a amphitheater that will be in the bowl just below the hill on the left side of the bridge. And so we're looking at basically about an $11–12 million project over the next 12 years. Next slide, please. And this is a closer look at the bridge. This is actually a rail car that was brought in by Daggett Truck Line. And the former property owner, Dwayne Schaefer, who just passed away last week, had a drag line set up on one side to hold the back end of the car and ran a cable across the river and had a big Caterpillar on the other side. And he dragged this platform. It's actually the container rail car that had been in an accident. And then all the lumber and everything that's in there was milled on the property, and that was built. Next slide, please. And this is us standing there a week ago, Wednesday, before the ribbon cutting, talking about the future park here. And boy, it was cold on that bridge that day. The wind was whistling through the openings there. And but we had a few people show up, even though it was chilly. It kept on like it wanted to snow, but it didn't. Next one, please. And so this is North River Drive at the bottom of the bottom right of your picture. That's Highway 87, and the safe or the trail that we cut the ribbon on comes right up just out of sight of Highway 87 there. And where the red mark is on North River Road, that would be the entrance to the park and where the bridge just saw there. And so you see the city-owned ball fields and the school-owned ball fields. And the safe route that was earlier discussed, when you look over on the about halfway down the slide, you see Hickory Avenue. The safe route goes right off of there and on across to one of our housing developments across County Casat 29. And so we look at this future park as a major amenity to the not only Frazee, but the whole area for people to be able to come kayak, canoe, walk, bike, hike. And just south of the park a mile is Fisher Century Farm Land Trust, 900 acres with meandering lands, which was an old flood control area off the Otter Tail River that has now been put into a land trust, and there's cross-country skiing there. So eventually we will have a cross-country ski trail and hike trail coming from the Fisher Century Farm to this park. West of here a mile is a Bowser project, 245 acres for Brink Lake Restoration Project, which is a pollinator and waterfall production area. On down the river from here for 6 miles is state refuge and waterfall protection area. So we have kind of this whole area around most of Frazee that we're trying to connect nature with the city and make a congruent area for animal migration. Next slide. There we are. Back to you, Patrick.
Well, thanks, Hank. I should mention too that, Natalie, do you mind going to the previous slide there real quick? So where it says Lake Street North there at the bottom, that is Highway 87. That's where we just cut the ribbon on the trail. We're now in discussions, me, Hank, and the Frazee Community Development Corporation about if or when to apply for a transportation alternatives grant to get a spur off of the Heartland Trail up that street called North River Drive there up to the red circle. So we'd like ultimately a multi-use path along that North River Drive from Highway 87, from the Heartland Trail to Wanigan Park. And so we're looking at the possibility of applying either this year or next year for that segment there. And the co-chairs of the committee for our part of Minnesota for those transportation alternatives grants happen to be on this call. So I couldn't resist the temptation to throw that plug in there.
St. Patrick, I'm going to jump in for just a moment here because Hank delicately referred to the park as the park or the future park. And Patrick, you revealed the answer to the trivia question. So no, that's right. I just wanted to make sure that all the participants of the webinar knew that that was the answer. And if you picked up on what Patrick just mentioned, you can check your answers and see if you got it right. So I'll turn it back over to the speakers. I just wanted to pause for a moment to make sure that we were checking in on our trivia question for the day.
Well, I think we want to open it up for question and answer, but I just want to make a comment here really quick about what a hero Hank is for the Frazee community. And I know it takes a village to build the community, so there's a lot of different people involved. But I think Hank's probably the single person most responsible for the fact that the Heartland Trail goes through Frazee and the North Country Scenic Trail goes through Frazee, because Hank's so dedicated to Frazee and putting Frazee on the map and on the grid with respect to all these trails. I won't give Hank credit for the fact that the river goes through the area. Hank didn't do that. The good Lord did that. But he's also been a real champion of promoting that water trail too, and its connection to Frazee. So kudos to Hank for all of those things. I think Natalie, at this point, we could open it up for Q&A. I don't know if somebody's been scouring through the chat to see if there are any questions in there, or we can certainly open up the mics too for this.
Thanks. Yeah, this would be a good time for questions, and you can ask your questions either by providing your question in the chat box and typing it in, as Patrick had mentioned, or you can go live on the webinar, turn on your video and ask a question directly with our speakers today. So you can, if you'd like to choose to do that, you're welcome to do that. And I'll pause for a moment to open up that opportunity.
Hi, my name's Alyssa. I work on I'm with the MS Society and the Bike MS program, and so this is the first time I've come on one of these, but it seems kind of fitting because so one of the rides I work on is called Ride Across Minnesota, formerly known as Tram. Some of you might be familiar, and we are actually looking at coming right back. Okay, just a little on the DL, but we're hoping to be right back in the area, actually near Frazee this year. I believe Fergus Falls, Wadena, Detroit Lakes are kind of our key areas, and so I'm kind of curious, like, what parts. I joined a little late because my reminder didn't come on, but I'm kind of curious to hear more about like what parts are really going to be ready to be highlighted if we do happen to come by that part this year. Because obviously some things will be coming up in the near future.
The trail is completed from that new bridge that you saw into Detroit Lakes. And currently they're working, Detroit Lakes is working on a segment going to Dutton Locks. That's not finished yet. Part of it is from Lakes Lanes by Cassaw 6 to Dutton Locks. But not all of it is done through the city of Detroit Lakes. And we do not have the connection done from the bridge to the city of Frazee. The trail through the city, though, they're just, the sidewalk or the trail itself is in there and they're finishing up the street. But as far as going east from Frazee, there is no trail at this time. Highway 87 though was widened last year for 12 miles on both sides so that you can actually ride a bike on there out to the little village of Evergreen.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we definitely do routes that go on highways, especially when we're in parts of the state that it's a little safer to do that on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great to know. We might be emailing you with some questions in the future if that's all right.
You go right ahead.
Thank you.
You bet.
Alyssa, thanks for joining today. We're welcoming you to the webinar here and to the Bike Walk Leadership Network. And thanks, Hank, for sharing a little more information about that. This is great for making some connections, as it were. We're a network and we'd like to share ideas and strategies and connect people to help make things happen in Frazee and in Minnesota statewide. We do have a couple of questions in the chat box here, so I'll go ahead and ask a couple of questions that we have. Let's see here. First off, Hank and Patrick, would you be willing to pop your emails into the chat box so that folks can get in touch with you?
See if I can get it. I've never had real good luck with the chat box myself. But.
So I just posted mine, patrick.hollister@claycountymn.gov. And if Hank doesn't manage to put his in, you're welcome to contact me and I'll give you Hank's. So
let's see here.
All right. And then, of course, I asked you that right before I was going to ask you a pressing question from the audience. So maybe we'll take a question, and then I don't know if while Hank is looking for the email here to get that up, Patrick, you might want to, maybe you can jump in first. So the first question here is, how has the response been from the larger community about the trail investment? Are these trail systems plowed in the winter and or used for snowmobiles?
So by my understanding, and Hank can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Heartland Trail itself, generally speaking, is usable by snowmobiles in the winter. Consequently, I don't think the snow is cleared off in the winter for most parts of the trail because the snowmobiles are welcome to use it. There are exceptions when the trail goes within city limits. Some cities prohibit snowmobiling on the segment of the Heartland Trail within their city limits in the winter. And I believe that is the case with Frazee. Snowmobiles are not going to be allowed on this portion in the winter. However, Frazee is working on an alternate route for those snowmobilers around Frazee. Am I right on that, Hank?
Yes, you are. We'd be looking at putting another bridge and actually a small bridge across at our Lions Park across the state water trail. And we would bring us to a minimum maintenance road and then come in along the river on the southeast side of Frazee. And that would allow the snowmobiles access to all the city amenities and also be able to continue on east. I'm not able to get my chat sent here. Let's see if that works. No, that didn't work.
anybody wants to contact Hank, just contact me and I'll put you in touch with Hank. I've got his email and I'd be happy to do that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. With response to the first part of the question, how has the community reception been generally to the trails? I think it's been quite positive. Hank might want to chime in on that too. There have been some segments where there's been some controversy involved, but I think it has more to do with sort of the geometry and what happens to people's driveways and you know, some people have had some people have retaining walls on MnDOT property. They have fences on MnDOT property. They have concrete steps on MnDOT's property. That all has to go during a reconstruct. And what exactly happens on a property by property basis to replace it can sometimes be contentious. But I would say generally the reception's been positive. There's also negotiations with some landowners can get sticky about easements and right of way and that kind of thing too. But I think generally it's been quite positive. Would you agree with that, Hank?
Yes, I would. You know, it's been one of the things when the city redid their comp plan in the last two, they've actually looked at better use of our land use and recreation and also tourism. We look at, you know, tourism as a major driver of the economy in Becker and Otter Tail, Wilkin and Clay counties. And so we look at the future park and the trail systems, you know, basically connecting 350,000 people together in this area.
And just to bring into perspective, you know, what's the population of Frazee?
Frazee's population is roughly 1,400.
1,400. So it's a big draw. It's that tourism piece is huge. All right, I have one other question here I want to ask from the chat box here. And then kind of a follow-up question too. The question is, do you think having the support of elected officials made it easier or harder in some ways to get these trail connections for Frazee?
Well, I'll chime in on that one and then invite Hank to comment too. But I think these trail segments couldn't get built without the support of elected officials. I think the most critical support is, well, I think in three categories. There's city officials, there's county officials, and then there's state legislators. And we need all three of them. I think you got to have support of the local city councils and also the county board, because MnDOT very often gets involved in these projects like they did with Highway 87 or the DNR, and they're sensitive to the opinions of local officials. And so if MnDOT or the DNR is confronting a city council or a county board that says, no way, we don't want this, the MnDOT is very hesitant and the DNR is very hesitant to force something on a community where their own local elected representatives are saying they don't want it. And then the state legislative support is really important for things like the bonding bill and appropriations for these trail projects. That's also critical to get these built. Hank, I welcome you to chime in also on that.
Well, I agree with you 100% there. You know, it's local government grassroots organizations, you know, that approach the city council and the county boards and get the legislators involved to see how is it going to benefit the area and the people, and also people coming in from other parts of the country, and to make them feel welcome and to use the natural resources that we have. And I also vice chair the Becker County Recreational Advisory Committee, and I've been on that for many years. And what we look at is limited access to our tax forfeited lands that the county has. We control over 75,000 acres in north, east, and northern Becker County. And we also border on the White Earth Indian Reservation. And so we try to make these amenities available. And there are parts of the county where we also have very little access just because of the milieu that's there. You know, we don't want to disturb some of these areas. But we run like 47 boat launches that we take care of in the county right now through Sentence to Serve.
This was kind of leading into the second part of the question that I was going to ask the speakers today. So Hank, thanks for kind of leading into that. We have a combination of advocates, educators, folks who are part of this network who are just interested in some of the topics that we present and cover to spotlight communities across Minnesota. And so as far as the connection with the question about elected officials and in particular lobbying to get some of the support that we need for this to happen, some of the folks on this call may be able to fulfill that capacity and others may not. So as we come together, did either of you, Patrick or Hank, want to speak to the partnerships that are involved and those stakeholders that are key to the success of these projects?
So
Go ahead.
okay. So I'll jump in again and then invite Hank. So we, the Heartland Trail has ended in Park Rapids for quite a while. I mean, a lot of people think of it as the trail from Cass Lake to Park Rapids. And Hank has a much longer history with the effort to get it from Park Rapids to Moorhead than I do, but I've been at this now for 12 years. And both Becker County and Clay County formed committees. There's sort of a Becker County committee and a Clay County committee to get the Heartland Trail through those two counties, ultimately to Moorhead. Those committees consist of local officials, county and city officials, township officials in some cases. They were kind enough to invite me on both of those committees. And depending on the issue, we often invite our state legislators to those committee meetings, and Chamber of Commerce people, health advocates, all kinds of different people have served on those committees, even people that are just enthusiasts. And we've also got the snowmobile constituency represented on those committees, and so it takes everybody involved to get these things going. Hank, what more would you like to add to that?
Well, I can't agree with you more than that. It's been a major effort. You're looking, at 10 cities, one unincorporated village, 3 counties involved in trying to get this extension put together. And it's a continuous change. We have legislators changing, county officials changing, township officials and city officials changing all the time, plus the staffing of these different government entities. And also at the same time, when you're looking at routing through different areas, property owners are changing. So you may have an agreement with one day, and a month later the property is sold, and you're back knocking on the door again, trying to talk them into the idea, that basically the people that use these trails are not going to steal your barbecue out of your backyard, not going to shoot your dog or something. I mean, the people that do this type of recreation, what they bring with them, they take back out with them. They don't drop it off on somebody's yard someplace, or throw it in a ditch somewhere, and it makes a major difference. And plus the biking and hiking, it's a slower pace, and you get to know people along these trails and you get to see a whole different aspect at 5 or 10 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour than you do at 65 or 70.
One more comment I'll throw in here at the risk of sounding self-promoting is we've got people from all over the state on this call. If you're working on a trail project or you're interested in getting started on a trail project, find out who your local SHIP people are, Statewide Health Improvement Partnership. Most of them are employees of your county public health department. Find out who they are and get them involved. Part of SHIP's mission is making our communities more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. And a big part of that are these trail projects. And so trail projects like the kind that Hank and I are working on is in the job description of SHIP people all over the state. And they've got resources, they've got expertise, they've got enthusiasm and energy, and they want to help. So find out who your SHIP people are. And if you're curious, if you have more curiosity about that, feel free to contact me at the email that I put in the chat there. And we've got, oh, Tina just gave us some more information in the chat too. Thank you. So, and I know we've got Joanne's on the call. She's a SHIP person down in Dakota County. So we're all over the place and we want to help.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Dina. This is great. You know, it's good to make sure that everyone is, you know, these are educational webinars. These are webinars to network and webinars to learn, and just knowing that the folks exist and who to bring to the table. When you're forming a team, when you have a project or you have an idea about something, who do you get to the table to make these things happen? And it's really a combination of a lot of these folks that are here today and more. And as Hank mentioned, folks move around and change jobs, and new people come in and new people buy properties, and things like that are happening all the time. So it's really in flux a lot of the time. So if you're new to this project work and you're new to coming into active transportation project, you know, kind of knowing that that's the environment that you're coming into, but you know, to bring forward what you contribute in a way that you're able to show up, because we appreciate the you know, the planners, the engineers, but also the local public health folks and the advocates who are able to lobby on behalf of some of these projects. So all of you are important in your own roles in this work, and reach out to your folks that you know, and ask questions about who we're missing from the table, and get people engaged. So. All right, so I'm going to just check in with the group again to see. I'll pause for a moment. If anyone would like to ask a question, you can go off mute, go on video, and ask your question. We still have a couple of minutes to close out our Q&A segment before we wrap up the webinar with a couple of announcements.
Well, and I see that Vern Holmgren is on here, you know, and he was here with a design team in 2013, where they came and looked at Frazee and added their input, which has been a major help to us as we grow. And the other thing too, I want to talk about, you mentioned it, lobbying. You know, you need to get to the Capitol. You need to lobby your legislators. We did not get our bonding bill done this year. So here at Frazee, we have, because of one word in our agreement that did not have the word construct in, we have the money to come to Frazee, but the agreement did not have the word construct. It had design and engineering in it. And so we're sitting here with approximately $900,000 that we need for probably a $785,000 project to finish getting into Frazee with this trail. And we can't use the money. We have to go back here to the next session and lobby to get that word in there so that we can use the money that we've already gotten 2 years ago. So you got to be careful of how things are worded. You got to double check and triple check. And then also support Bike MN's mayoral caucus. I was on that for a few years with the mayor of Apple Valley and also the mayor of Rochester, you know, and you get the word out. Alternate transportation systems are a major thing, you know, especially when you look at what it costs for fuel now. It's a lot better to pedal or walk to work if you can, or use bring your bike on public transportation, you know, and do the last part on your bike. And of course, as we see in the metro area, you know, you have the winter rides all the time, and the fat tire bikes, you know, running around Lake Como in different areas. It's a good thing to do. So remember, lobby. You got to support your projects.
Thanks, Hank.
Mhm.
It's just really great to have Patrick and Hank on today to talk about Frazee and these projects. And you can tell the depth of knowledge that both of these folks have and how much work has gone into these projects over the years for many, many years. So we appreciate this perspective that you bring to the table today and everything that you have shared. So thank you so much for all of that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again because I do have another slide I want to put up here. And we'll get to this here and then wrap up with any additional questions that you might have. I put up a slide in September during the Leadership Network webinar about the Safe Routes to School Boost implementation and planning grant applications that were open. There's some links here that can be shared in the chat box to get more information on this. So maybe some of you have applied for funding and others may have thought about it. There's still time left, so you can get some information about this by clicking on the links and put those deadlines on your calendar so that you can manage to that. But this is dollars that are available, funding opportunities for helping to implement your plans. And as Hank mentioned, when you're writing up some of the stuff, make sure that it's carefully worded and that you're including all of the different things in the way that it was intended to be, that the words are not only just in your thoughts, but are down on paper in the way that you would like to present them for to be considered for funding. So a couple of deadlines coming up here, and I don't know, maybe we can use the Zoom feature here. If there's anyone who has applied for one of these grants, you could put a thumbs up in your screen, and then we can kind of see if there's some folks on the call that are participating and have applied for some of these dollars. It's a good opportunity this year, and so it's not too late to participate in some of this. So, oh good, I see Bemidji has a thumbs up on the screen here, and I know there's probably others out there as well. So let's see here. So there's just a couple of wrap up comments here. A couple folks have to drop off, and we are a few minutes before time. I'll just pause for a moment and see if there are any other updates from Bikeman staff who are on the webinar, and you might share. Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Well, I was actually going to ask a question too. Like, oftentimes at the end of at the webinar, we kind of display upcoming events and things like that. The fair weather season is obviously winding down, but we've seen this be one of the best ways to kind of highlight a lot of these trail systems. The St. Paul Classic uses part of the Gateway Trail. The Tour of Saints uses, I believe, part of the Lake Wobegon Trail. We'll be up in Fergus Falls. And so some of these events kind of get people kind of excited to highlight these communities and use some of these trail systems. Just wondering if there's anything like that on the radar for Frazee or that area.
Nothing that I know of at this point.
Okay, I mean, I know the trails still pretty fresh and stuff too, and and I was asking those questions about the multi-use trail for I've got family in the Brainerd Lakes area, and although some people never ride on those trails in the summer, there are a lot of snowmobilers up there, so that's a lot of the tourism in the winter too. So I think it actually is a really positive thing to see different groups of people invested in this outdoor recreation and investment. So yeah, thanks for sharing. This has been cool to see, and I really want to see that bridge now too. I always, whenever I visit friends in Vermont, I always want to see all the covered bridges. So it'll be nice to see one in Minnesota too.
And I see it here. There was a question, about how do you maintain dedication to a project throughout the years? What keeps you motivated? Making a better region for your future. A lot of the projects I'm working on, I may not be here to finish out. I'm 73 now, and I've been paralyzed a couple of times. But the thing was, I was no longer able to do a real job. So I had the time to do this stuff. And so I started working on parks probably in 1998. Trying to retrofit some of the city parks here. And we used, we actually were able to get some parks that were in harm's way from the city of Minnetonka, some playground equipment. And what they were doing before we got involved with it, they were just putting them in dumpsters and sending them off to be scrapped. And so we got prisoners from the Department of Correction to take the ones in harm's way out. And we borrowed vehicles and put in our own gas and used sentence to serve, scouts, other civic organizations to put these playgrounds back in place. We have one up in Beltrami, Minnesota, that we brought back to be used in Becker County, but we gave it to the city of Beltrami because they needed the equipment and it wasn't being placed anywhere. But we brought back 5 different playground systems. So, you know, and the great thing is when you see people using the amenities, families out, we have our daycare facility people that are out already walking on this new trail through the city with all the little kids, you know, and they're having a great time. You know, it connects the different parks through the city. And the trail systems are the same way. You know, the North Country comes through from Itasca Park our way, and that's our local chapter, the Laurentian Lakes chapter. That walking path comes through out of Itasca Park up into Clearwater County, comes on down through Tamarack Wildlife Refuge, Hubble Pond, another dedicated area, to within 8 miles of Frazee right now. Frazee is also first trail town in Minnesota for the North Country. But you know, things don't just have to be in Frazee. Anywhere in your region or the state is always a win for everybody in the state.
Yep. And I'll just answer Maya's question by saying that I like to celebrate the little victories. That helps keep me motivated. And by little victories, in the case of the Heartland Trail, I mean these relatively short segments of the trail, but every little bit helps. So like, you know, the Frazee segment that we just cut the ribbon on last week, that's about a mile long. We've got other shorter segments that are getting built that I'm excited about. By July next year, there's going to be a segment, probably also about a mile in Detroit Lakes, that's going to be done along West Lake Drive. That's also a segment of the Heartland Trail. And then there's a little piece of it that got built 3 or 4 years ago in the city of Glendon, east of Moorhead. That thing is probably half a mile long, but it is a segment of the future Heartland Trail. And sometimes at the countywide Heartland Trail meetings, people look at me like I'm nuts because I'm getting all excited about these little half-mile pieces. But to me, every little bit helps. And also, the other thing that keeps me motivated on these trail projects, even though, you know, it might take us, I hope not, but all told, from the time when the Heartland Trail was officially designated by state action back in the 60s to someday when the whole thing is totally done, this might be a 100-year project. I hope not, but it might be. And but even along the way, these little bits and pieces that we build are usable by the people that live around them. So even the little segment in Glendon that's probably half a mile long, I mean, I hope we can get it connected at both ends to the Heartland Trail within this decade. But even if we don't, people are using that piece every day. People are already using the segment within Frazee, you know, and so these little bits and pieces have utility even before they're connected. So that helps keep me motivated. Someday when they're connected, the utility increases exponentially, but even right now, people are using it right now. You know, it's the same deal with, we just completed the segment between Pelican Rapids and Perm, the Heart of the Lakes Trail, with the exception of the piece within Maplewood State Park. That one is going to take a little bit longer. But even before that Maplewood Park segment is done, people are already biking at both ends every day. And it's just great. So every little bit, I would say not only every little bit helps, but every little bit is useful in and of itself.
Well, and also the Heart of Lakes Trail, you know, we look at eventually connecting the Heartland Trail extension to that through Fisher Century Farms and on over to connect coming into the northeast side of Perm or northwest side of Perm. And that the connectivity of the trails make it so that if you want to go for an hour, a day, a week, or a month, it's making sure that you can do that on the connectivity of the trails, and also providing the things that you need along the way, you know, the camping opportunities, places to resupply, all this, and a Minnesota friendly atmosphere when you get there.
With that, Hank, I think that's a really positive note to close the webinar out on today. And I appreciate all of your comments and perspective and all of the questions that folks in the webinar shared today and asked of our presenters. I hope that all of you have a wonderful day. Thanks for attending today. Join us in November. And thank you so much to Patrick and Hank. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank
We will
you.
see ya.
Bye-bye.